This video is for those of you who need help with the math section of the TEAS exam. So what I recommend is that for each question, pause the video and try the problem yourself. It's the best way to learn. And then unpause it to see the solution and if you got it right. So let's go ahead and begin. Number 1, evaluate the expression shown below. Now you need to be familiar with the order of operations. Perhaps you remember the expression PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. P stands for parentheses, E is for exponents, M for multiplication, D for division, A is addition, S is subtraction. So this tells you the order in which you should perform the operations. So you need to work on the stuff inside the parentheses before you multiply or add. So inside the parentheses we have 7 minus 3. 7 minus 3 is 4. And then the next important thing we need to consider is the exponents. 4 squared tells us that we're multiplying 2 4s together, so that's 4 times 4. Now 8 times 4 is 32, and 4 times 4 is 16. So now we can add 5 plus 32 is 37, and 37 minus 16, you could subtract it like this if you want to. 7 minus 6 is 1, 3 minus 1 is 2. So the final answer is 21. So answer choice E is the right answer. Number 2, which of the following is equal to the value of x in the equation shown below? So whenever you need to solve an equation, your goal is to get the variable by itself on one side of the equation. Everything else, move it to the other side. So let's focus on getting the x variable on the left side of the equation. To do that, we need to subtract both sides by 3x. Positive 3x plus negative 3x adds up to 0. So we're not going to have any x variables on the right side, only the left side now. On the left, it's 5x minus 3x, which is 2x. And everything else, we can bring it down. So we have 2x plus 12 is equal to 20. Now, how can we move the 12 to the other side? The opposite of addition is subtraction. So you need to subtract both sides by 12. 20 minus 12 is 8. Now, how can we move the 2 to the other side? Notice that the 2 is multiplied to the x. The opposite of multiplication is division. So we need to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're going to get 1x, which is the same as x. On the right side, 8 divided by 2 is 4. And so that is the value of x. X is equal to 4, which means that D is the right answer. Number 3, convert 0.35 into a fraction. So how can we convert a decimal into a fraction? 0.35 is the same as 0.35 divided by 1. Any number divided by 1 is equal to itself. 5 divided by 1 is 5. Now what we need to do is we need to multiply the top and bottom by 100. Since 0.35 ends in the 100th place, then we need to multiply the top and bottom by 100. The 3 is in the 10th place. The 5 is in the 100th place. So for example, let's say if I wanted to convert 0.4 into a fraction, I would multiply the top and bottom by 10 over 10. If I want to convert 0.215 into a fraction, I would multiply the top and bottom by 1,000. What this will do is it's going to get rid of the decimal. And so I'm only going to have like whole numbers in the fraction or integers. 0.35 times 100, what is that? If you multiply 0.35 by 10, the decimal point moves only 1 unit to the right. But if you multiply it by 100, it's going to move 2 units to the right. So 0.35 times 100 is 35. 1 times 100 is 100. Now 35 is 5 times 7. 100 is 5 times 20. And 5 divided by 5 is 1, so we could cancel it. And therefore the final answer is going to be 7 divided by 20, which means B is the correct answer choice. Now, let's go over some other examples so you can get used to this. So let's say if we have 0.4. You need to multiply by 10 over 10 if you want to convert it to a fraction. 0.4 times 10 is 4. 1 times 10 is 10, and then you can reduce it. 4 can be broken into 2 times 2, and we can write 10 as 2 times 5. So notice that we could cancel a 2. So 0.4 is equal to 2 over 5 as a fraction. For the sake of practice, try this one. So let's say if we have 0.28, go ahead and convert that into a fraction. Because we have 2 digits to the right of a decimal point, we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 100. 0.28 times 100 is 28, and 1 times 100 is 100. Now, what two numbers that you could think of multiplies to 28? 28 is 4 times 7. Now, what two numbers multiply to 100, one of which contains a 4? 100 could be written as 10 times 10, 5 times 20, but it could be written as 4 times 25. Now, we could cancel the 4. So 0.28 as a fraction is 7 divided by 25. And so those are some simple ways that you can employ to convert a decimal into a fraction. Now, if you need to convert a fraction into a decimal, you can use a calculator or you can use long division. So for instance, we know that 7 over 20 is equal to 0.35, but let's prove it. So let's use long division. So we're going to put the 20 on the outside and the 7 on the inside. Now 20 goes into 7 0 times. So let's add a decimal point. Now how many times does 20 go into 70? Even though it's 7, we're going to treat this as if it's 70. 20 goes into 70 3 times. 3 times 20 is 60. So 0.3 times 20 is really 6. Now 70 minus 60 is 10. Now 20 goes into 10. It doesn't go into 10, so we need to add a 0. Now how many times does 20 go into 100? 20 goes into 100 5 times. 20 times 5 is 100, and so the remainder is 0. And so that's how you can get 0.35. Number 4. Which of the following is equivalent to 23.8%? In other words, how can we convert a percent into a decimal? A simple way to do that is to divide the percentage by 100. So what's 23.8 divided by 100? When you divide something by 100, actually before I answer that question, do you remember what happens if we multiply a number by 100? For example, let's say if I have 0.45. If I multiply this by 100, what do I need to do to the decimal? When multiplying a number by 100, you need to move the decimal 2 units to the right. So 0.45 times 100 is 45. Now what if I'm doing the reverse? What if I'm dividing a number by 100? Well, then I should move the decimal 2 units to the left, in the other direction. So 23.8 divided by 100 is really 0.238. And so that's a simple way to convert a percentage into a decimal. You need to divide the percentage by 100. And so C is the right answer. So let me give you some more examples. Convert the following numbers into a decimal value. So let's say if we have 450%, 65%, 8%, 1.2%, and 0.5%. Go ahead and convert each of these numbers into a decimal. So 450 divided by 100 is going to be 4.5. So 450% is equivalent to 4.5. Now 65 divided by 100, the decimal point is here, that's going to equal 0.65. Now 8 divided by 100, I need to add a 0 here. Here's the new decimal point, so that's going to be 0.08. So 1.2 divided by 100, I need to add a 0 here, so that's going to be 0.012. Now 0.5%, so 0.5 divided by 100, This is 1, 2. So that's going to be 0.005. So now you know how to convert a percentage into a decimal. Number 5. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to 3x minus 2 times 2x plus 5? So what we need to do is we need to FOIL this expression. So F stands for first. We're going to multiply the first term in each binomial, so 3x times 2x. Now 3 times 2 is 6. But what is x times x? When multiplying variables, you need to add the exponents. 1 plus 1 is a 2. So if you don't see a number here, it's a 1. So this is going to be 6x squared. And then we need to multiply the 2 on the outside. So negative 2 times 5, that's negative 10. And then the 2 on the inside, negative 2 times 2x, that's negative 4x. And then the last one that we're missing is, we didn't do 3x times 5 yet. So 3x times 5, that's 15x. Now we need to combine like terms. These two are like terms because they both carry an x. Negative 4x plus 15x. Negative 4 plus 15 is the same as 15 minus 4, which is 11. And so this is going to be the final answer. It's 6x squared plus 11x minus 10. So this corresponds to answer choice B. Now, for the sake of practice, let's try another problem. So let's say if we have 4x plus 3 times 3x minus 7. Go ahead and FOIL this expression. So it's going to be 4x times 3x. 4 times 3 is 12. X times x is x squared. And then we can multiply 4x times negative 7. The order doesn't matter as long as you get your 4 terms initially. 4x times 7 is negative 28x. And then 3 times 3x is 9x. And then we can multiply 3 times negative 7, which is negative 21. Now we need to combine like terms. So negative 28 plus 9, that's a negative 19. So the final answer is 12x squared minus 19x minus 21. And so that's it for this problem. Number 6. John is currently receiving 300 milligrams of medication on a daily basis. His doctor tells you to increase the dosage by 25% starting tomorrow. How many milligrams should you administer to John on the next day? So first, we need to realize that you need to administer more than 300 because we're dealing with a percent increase problem. So therefore, it can't be less than 300, so it's not going to be A or B. So he needs 25% more than 300. So first, we need to find out what 25% of 300 is. So what is 25% of 300? Well, if you want to do it mentally, here's what you can do. First, find out how much 10% of 300 is. To figure out 10% of a number, simply multiply 300 by 0.10 or move the decimal 1 unit to the left. So 10% of 300 is 30. Therefore, 20%, because 20% is twice the value of 10%, it has to be twice the value of 30, which is 60. And how much is 5% of 300? 5% is half of 10%. So if 10% corresponds to 30, 5% has to be half of 30, which is 15. Now 25% is basically 20% plus 5%. So that's going to be 60 plus 15, which is 75. Now, if you have access to a calculator, to find out 25% of 300, take 300 and multiply it by 25% as a decimal. And you know to convert a percentage into a decimal, you need to divide by 100 or move the decimal point 2 units to the left. So 25% is the same as 0.25. So 300 times 0.25 will give you the same answer of 75. So since we want to increase the medication by 25%, it's going to be 300 plus 75, or 375. So D is the right answer. Number 7. Megan is working full-time as a nurse earning $28 per hour. If she decides to work overtime, she can receive 1.5 times her base pay for every hour above 40 hours that she works in a given week. If she works 60 hours this week and pays a net of 30% in federal income taxes, Social Security, and Medicare taxes, how much money will she receive in her paycheck this week after taxes? So the first 40 hours that she works, she's going to receive $28 per hour. So that's her normal base pay. So if we multiply that by 40 hours, that's going to be $11.20. So that's how much money she's going to earn before taxes if she works full-time. Now, if she works overtime, her base pay changes. It's going to be 28 times 1.5. So that's basically 28 plus half of 28. Half of 28 is 14. 28 plus 14 is 42. And so 28 times 1.5 is 42. So for every hour that she works above 40 hours, her hourly pay will now be $42 per hour. So this week she's working 60 hours. So if we deduct 40 hours from 60, she's working 20 hours overtime. 42 times 20, that's $840. So if we add those two numbers, this week she's going to earn $1,960 before taxes. Now she's going to pay 30% in taxes. This includes the federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare taxes. So we're assuming she doesn't have to pay any state income taxes. So what's 30% of 1960? 30% as a decimal, if you take 30 and divide it by 100, that's going to be 0.30. So 1960 times 0.3 is 588. So that's how much she pays in taxes. Her take-home pay after taxes is going to be the difference between 1960 and 588. So let's subtract those two numbers the old-fashioned way. We could use a calculator, but it's good to know the old techniques. So we can't really subtract 0 by 8, so we need to borrow a 1. So let's take away a 1 from 6. So this becomes 5, and 0 becomes 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2. Now we can't subtract 5 and 8, so we need to borrow another 1. Let's take a 1 from 9. So the 5 becomes 15, and the 9 becomes 8. So now we need to subtract 15 by 8. 15 minus 8 is 7. And then 8 minus 5 is 3. 1 minus nothing, or 1 minus 0, is 1. So her take-home pay is going to be $13.72. That's after taxes, which means C is the right answer. Number 8. What is the value of x in the equation shown below? So what do you think we need to do? So we got to get x by itself, ideally on the left side. So let's get rid of the 7. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So let's subtract both sides by 7. 7 minus 7 is 0. So on the left side, we're just going to have 3x over 4. And on the right side, 13 minus 7 is 6. Now, how can we get rid of the fraction? The opposite of division is multiplication, so the 3x is divided by 4. To get rid of the 4, we can multiply both sides by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So on the left side, we only have 3x. On the right side, 6 times 4 is 24. Now the 3 is multiplied to the x. So to get rid of the 3, we need to perform an operation that's opposite or the reverse of multiplication, which is division. So we need to divide both sides by 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So x is equal to 8, which means D is the right answer. Number 9. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression shown below? So how can we add two mixed fractions? What we need to do is convert each mixed fraction into an improper fraction. So let's start with 2 1/3. So the denominator of the fraction will stay the same. Since we have a 3 here, that's not going to change. Now to find the number that goes on the top, multiply these two numbers. 2 times 3 is 6, and then add the numerator. 6 plus 1 is 7. So 2 1/3 is basically 7 over 3. So now it's your turn. Convert this into an improper fraction. So we have a 2 in the bottom, that's not going to change. So we're going to rewrite the 2. And we're going to multiply 3 times 2, which is 6, and then add 1, so that's going to be 7. Now we need to add these two improper fractions. In order to add or subtract fractions, the denominator has to be the same. So how can we get common denominators? The least common multiple of 2 and 3 is 6. 2 and 3, they both go into 6. So we need to get a common denominator of 6. So I'm going to multiply the fraction on the right by 3 over 3. And for the one on the left by 2 over 2. Whatever you do to the top, you must also do to the bottom. So 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 3 is 6. And 7 times 3 is 21. So now that we have the same denominator, we can add the numerators of the fractions. 14 plus 21 is 35. So this is the answer as an improper fraction. But looking at the answer choices, all of the answer choices are represented as a mixed fraction. So how can we convert an improper fraction back into a mixed fraction? So as an example, how can we convert 7 over 3 back to 2 1/3? Let's start with that. So ask yourself, how many times does 3 go into 7? 3 goes into 7 2 times, because 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. That exceeds 7. The denominator will stay the same, and then the difference between 6 and 7 is 1, so that's how you get 2 1/3. So how many times does 6 go into 35? 6 goes into 35 5 times. 6 times 5 is 30, that's less than 35. But 6 times 6 is 36, and that exceeds 35, so that's too much. Now the difference between 35 and 30 is 5, and the denominator will stay the same. So the answer is 5 and 5 6. Now, if you don't like to do it that way, here's what you can do. Another way in which you can do it is start with this number, 35 divided by 6. The highest multiple of 6 that's less than 35 is 30. So break down 35 into 30 and 5. Now you can separate this fraction into two smaller fractions. So it's 30 divided by 6 plus 5 divided by 6. 30 divided by 6 is 5. 5 plus 5 over 6 is the same as 5 and 5 6. And so that's another way in which you can get the same answer. So C is the right answer choice. Let's try another example. Go ahead and add these two mixed fractions. 3 1/4 plus 2 and let's say 3/5. So let's convert each mixed fraction into an improper fraction. Feel free to pause the video if you want to try it. So let's start with this one. So we're going to have the same denominator of 4. 3 times 4 is 12. plus 1, that's 13. Now for the other one, it's going to be 2 times 5, which is 10, plus 3, that's also 13. Now to add these two fractions, we need to get common denominators. So the common denominator between 4 and 5 is going to be 4 times 5, which is 20. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 4 over 4, and the other one by 5 over 5. Now 13 times 5 is 65. 5 times 4 is 20. 13 times 4 is 52. So now we need to add 65 and 52. So 5 plus 2 is 7, 6 plus 5 is 11. So that's going to be 111 over 20. Now let's convert the improper fraction back into a mixed fraction. So how many times does 20 go into 117? 20 times 5 is 100, so that's less than 117. But 20 times 6 is 120, and so that's too high. So it goes into 117 5 times. And because 20 times 5 is 100, we need to take the difference between 117 and 100, which is 17. So this is the final answer. Now, if you want to, you can do it this way. 117 is 100 plus 17, and then separate it into two fractions. And we know that 100 divided by 20 is 5. So 5 plus 17 over 20 is the same as 5, 17, 20. So now you know how to add two mixed fractions. Now in this problem, we're going to multiply two mixed fractions. So what's 6 and 2/5 multiplied to 4 and 3/8? Well, let's find out. So just like before, we're going to convert each mixed fraction into an improper fraction. So first we're going to rewrite the denominator. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 2, that's 32. 4 times 8 is 32 plus 3, that's 35. Now when multiplying two fractions, you can multiply across. So you can do 32 times 35 and 5 times 8. But if you do it that way, you're going to have to simplify a very large number. 32 times 35 is 1120. And so it's going to be a lot harder to do it that way. Instead, it's best to break down these numbers into smaller numbers and cancel before you multiply. For instance, 32 is 8 times 4. 35 is 5 times 7. So notice that we can cancel an 8 and we can cancel a 5. And there's no more fractions left over. So the final answer is simply 4 times 7, which is 28. And that's it. So before multiplying two large numbers, see if you can simplify and cancel. D is the right answer. 11. Evaluate the expression shown below. So how can we divide two fractions? Perhaps you heard of an expression called keep, change, flip. And what it tells us is that we need to keep the first fraction the same. So let's rewrite it as 35 divided by 18. And then we need to change division to multiplication. And finally, we need to flip the second fraction. So it's going to be 24 over 63. So now we need to multiply the two fractions. But before we multiply, let's see if we could simplify and cancel. So 35 is the same as 7 times 5. 18 is 6 times 3. 24, we can rewrite that as 6 times 4. And 63 is 9 times 7. So you want to break up these numbers in such a way that you could cancel something. Notice that we could cancel a 7 and we can cancel a 6. In the numerator, we have 5 times 4, which is 20. In the denominator, it's going to be 3 times 9, which is 27. And so this is the answer, 20 over 27, which corresponds to answer choice D. Number 12. Arrange the following numbers from least to greatest. So you need to think of a number line. The numbers to the right are greater than the numbers on the left. So what this means is that positive numbers are greater than negative numbers. So negative 2.3 has the lowest value. So we're going to put that first. So we can automatically eliminate answer choice D. Now for everything else, let's convert it into a decimal. So let's start with 3 over 5. What is 3 over 5 as a decimal? So let's use long division. 5 goes into 3 0 times. So let's add a 0. How many times does 5 go into 30? 5 goes into 30 6 times. And so 3 over 5 is the same as 0.6. So I'm just going to make a note here. Now what about 9 over 4? What is the value of that fraction as a decimal? Let's use long division. So let's put the denominator on the outside. 4 goes into 9 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8, and 9 minus 8 is 1. So now let's add a 0. How many times does 4 go into 10? 4 goes into 10 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. So 4 times 0.2 is 0.8. So 10 minus 8 is 2. We still have a decimal. And let's add another 0. So how many times does 4 go into 20? 4 goes into 25 times. And so the remainder is 0. Therefore, 9 over 4 is equivalent to 2.25 as a decimal. Now what about 85%? To convert a percentage into a decimal, move the decimal 2 units to the left. Divide 85% by 100. So that's the same as 0.85. Now 0.6 is less than 0.85. So that's going to be the next number in the list. So that's basically the same as 3 over 5. And then 0.85 is the next number, which corresponds to 85. And 2.25 is greater than 0.85. So that's 9 over 4. So therefore this is the answer. So this corresponds with answer choice A. 13. Which of the following could be a value of x according to the equation shown below? So how can we solve absolute value equations? In this form, you need to write two equations when you get rid of the absolute value function. The first equation is the original one, 2x minus 5 is equal to 9. And the second equation is 2x minus 5 is equal to negative 9. The reason being is the absolute value of 9 is 9, but the absolute value of negative 9 is also 9. So on the inside, we can have two possible answers, 9 or negative 9, because they will both produce an output of positive 9. So let's focus on the first equation. To calculate the value of x, we need to add 5 to both sides. 9 plus 5 is 14. And then we need to divide both sides by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So x is equal to 7. Now on the right side, we need to add 5 to both sides again. Negative 9 plus 5 is negative 4. And then if we divide both sides by 2, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So we have two possible answers for the value of x. It can be negative 2 or 7. But the answer that's listed is negative 2. So answer choice A is the right answer. Number 14. Which of the following numbers is represented by the Roman numeral MDCLXVII? So let's go over the basics of Roman numerals. You need to know that I stands for 1, V is 5, X is 10, L is 50, C represents 100, D is 500, and M is 1,000. I think of M as a millennial, like a millennium, that's 1,000 years. C, a century, that's 100 years. Now, before we work on this problem, there are some other things you need to know. What is the value of VI versus IV? Now, VI, V is 5, I is 1. So when the numbers are arranged in descending order, you need to add. So VI is 5 plus 1, which is 6. When it's arranged in ascending order or increasing order, you have to subtract. So IV is really 5 minus 1, which corresponds to 4. So it's the same as writing I 4 times. So what are the values for XI and IX? XI is going to be 10 plus 1, which is 11, and IX is 10 minus 1, which corresponds to 9. So keep that in mind. Now let's focus on this expression. So we have, let me get rid of this first. So we have the letter M, D, C, L, X, V, I, and I. So M corresponds to 1,000, D corresponds to 500, C is 100, and then L, that's 50, X is 10, V is 5, and then we have 2 ones. So 5 plus 1 plus 1 is 7, 5 and 1 is 6, another 5 and 1 is 6, and then bring down this one. So this corresponds to 1,667, which means D is the right answer. 15. Sally received the following scores in her algebra class: 78, 83, 91, 86, and 92. What is her average test score? So anytime you wish to calculate the average of a number, it's basically the sum of all the numbers involved divided by the number of numbers in the list. So we need to add up 78, 83, 91, 86, and 92. So let's use a calculator for that. So the sum of those 5 numbers is 430. Now let's divide 430 by 5. You can use a calculator or you can do it another way. Let's split up 430 into 2 numbers, 400 plus 30. Now what is 400 divided by 5? Think of 40 divided by 5. 40 divided by 5 is 8. So 400 divided by 5 is 80. And 30 divided by 5 is 6. So 430 divided by 5 is 86. And that's going to be the average test score. 16. What is the sum of the mean, median, mode, and range of the following numbers? So the first thing we need to do is arrange these numbers in ascending order. So to put it in increasing order, let's start with the lowest number, which is 5. And then it's going to be 8, 8, 12, 16, 21, 32, 36, and 60. Now, let's start with the mean. The mean is basically the average. So we need to find the sum and then divide it by all the 9 numbers that we have here. So let's add up 5 plus 8 plus 8 plus all the numbers in this list. And since we have a total of 9 numbers, we're going to divide the sum by 9. So the sum of the 9 numbers is 198. If we divide that by 9, that's equal to 22. So that's the average. So I'm just going to write that here. So the average is 22. Now what is the median? The median is simply the middle number. So let's get rid of the first and the last numbers, and then the next two, and let's work our way towards the center. So the one in the middle is the median. So the median in this example is 16. Now what about the mode? How can we find the mode? The mode is the number that occurs most frequently in the list. So 8 is the most frequent number. It has the highest frequency. It's written twice in this list. Now what about the range? The range is the difference between the highest number and the lowest number. So the highest number is 60, the lowest number is 5. 60 minus 5 is 55. Now, our goal is to determine the sum of the mean, median, mode, and range. So let's add up these four numbers. 2 plus 8 is 10, and 6 plus 5 is 11. 11 plus 10 is 21. So let's carry over the 2. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, plus 5 is 11. No, not 11, but 10. So the final answer is 101, which corresponds to answer choice E. So that's the sum of the mean, median, mode, and range in this example. 17. A patient weighs 187 pounds. What is the patient's weight in kilograms? So in this problem, we need to convert pounds to kilograms. How can we do so? Well, let's start with what we're given. So we're given 187 pounds. Now, in the next fraction, we need to put our conversion factor, which is 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. Now, we want to put the unit pounds in the bottom so that they will cancel. And therefore, the unit kilograms is going to go on top. And the number associated with kilograms is a 1, and the number associated with pounds is 2.2. So this will give us the answer in kilograms. So it's going to be 187 divided by 2.2. And this is equal to 85 kilograms. That's the answer. So that corresponds to answer choice B. Number 18. A patient is receiving 125 milligrams of acetaminophen. How many grams of this medication is the patient receiving? Now, this is another unit conversion problem. The only difference is we don't have the conversion factor. So you need to know that 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. So now we can convert 125 milligrams into grams. So start with what you're given. Now, we need to put the unit milligrams on the bottom so that it cancels, and the other unit, grams, we're going to put on top. The number associated with grams is 1, and the number associated with milligrams is 1,000. So you need to set it up in such a way that the unit milligrams will cancel. So it's going to be 125 divided by 1,000. Whenever you divide a number by 1,000, move the decimal 3 units to the left. So this is equal to 0.125 grams, which means C is the answer. 19. The driving distance from Orlando, Florida to New Orleans, Louisiana on a map is 16 inches. If the scale of the map indicates that 1 inch is 40 miles, what is the driving distance between Orlando and New Orleans in miles? So we need to convert inches to miles using this as our conversion factor. So let's start with what we're given, and that's 16 inches. Now I'm going to put the unit inches on the bottom and miles on top. So the number associated with miles is 40, as we can see here, and the number in front of inches in the conversion factor is 1. So based on the setup, the unit inches will cancel. So it's just going to be 16 times 40. And so the answer is going to be 640 miles. So that's the driving distance between these two cities, which means D is the right answer. Number 20. What is the area of the figure shown below? So we have a composite figure, and what you want to do in a situation like this is you want to break it up into smaller rectangles. So let's turn this into a rectangle, and this part as well. So let's find the area of this rectangle. So we have a length of 10 and a width of 5. The area of a rectangle is simply length times width. 5 times 10, so that's 50. Now if we focus on this rectangle here, notice that we have a length of 13 and a width of 4. So 13 times 4 is 52. Now the last thing that we need to do is find the area of this section right there highlighted in blue. So notice that this part is 10 and this part is 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. So this section is 4. So that's basically the length of that rectangle. And now what about the width of that rectangle? So notice that we have this section, which is 5, which means this part is also 5. And this section is 4, which means this part is 4. And the total length is 15. So this region highlighted in blue has to be the difference between 15 and 5 plus 4, which is 9. So 15 minus 9 is 6. So we have a rectangle with the dimensions 4 and 6. So 4 times 6 is 24. So now to find the total area of the composite figure, we need to add these three numbers. So that's going to be 50 plus 52 plus 24. Now 2 plus 4 is 6. 5 plus 5 plus 2 is 12. So the area is going to be 126 square units. Therefore, D is the right answer. 21. Jason purchases 2 apples for 55 cents each and 3 oranges for 45 cents each. He gives the sales clerk a $5 bill. How much money should Jason receive in change from the sales clerk? So first, let's determine the total cost of the 5 items that he's purchasing. So he's buying 2 apples, and each apple has a price of 55 cents. And he's buying 3 oranges that cost 45 cents each. Now 2 times 0.55, that's $1.10. And 3 times 0.45, that's going to be $1.35. So if we add those two numbers, the total cost is $2.45. Now the amount of change that he's going to receive is the difference between the total cost and $5. So all we need to do is subtract $5 by $2.45. So 5 minus 2.45, that's equal to 2.55. So that's how much change he's going to receive. It's $2.55, which means C is the right answer. 22. The number of patients admitted to hospital XYZ increased from 32,000 in 2017 to 36,000 in 2018. Calculate the percent increase during this 2-year period. So to calculate the percent change that occurred during this 2-year period, it's going to equal the new value minus the original value divided by the original value times 100%. So the new value is 36,000. The original value is 32,000. So if we subtract 36,000 by 32,000, that's going to give us 4,000. Now 4,000 divided by 32,000, that's 0.125. If you multiply that by 100, this will give you 12.5%. So that's the percent change, and because the percent change is positive and not negative, this is a percent increase, which means B is the right answer. 23. Express 5/8 as a percentage. So how can we express a fraction as a percentage? First, we'll need to convert the fraction into a decimal, and then we can convert the decimal into a percent. So let's use long division. So we need to divide 5 by 8. So we're going to put the denominator on the outside and the numerator on the inside. So 8 goes into 5 0 times. So we need to add a 0 and a decimal point. Now how many times does 8 go into 50? 8 goes into 50 6 times. 8 times 6 is 48, that's less than 50, but 8 times 7 is 56, which is more than 50. Now 8 times 6 is 48, so 8 times 0.6 is 4.8, with a difference of 0.2. Now if we bring the 0 down, we're going to treat it as if it's 20. 8 goes into 20 2 times. 8 times 2 is 16, and 20 minus 16 is 4. So now if we add another 0, 8 goes into 45 times. 8 times 5 is 40. So we're going to get a remainder of 0. Therefore, 5/8 is 0.625 as a decimal. Now to convert that to a percentage, multiply it by 100%, and this will give us 62.5%. And that's the answer. Answer choice D. 24. What is 4.5 times 2.36? Since using a calculator would just be too easy for this problem, let's multiply these two numbers by hand. So first, we need to multiply 6 and 5. 6 times 5 is 30, so we're going to put the first number 0 and carry over the 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 3, that's 18. So we're going to write the first number 8, carry over the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1, that's going to be 11. Now we need to add another 0. 4 times 6 is 24, but let me get rid of these numbers. Now we said 4 times 6 is 24, so we're going to write the 4, carry over the 2. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2, that's 14, so carry over the 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1, that's 9. Now we need to add. 0 plus 0 is 0, 8 plus 4 is 12, carry over the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 4 is 6, and 1 and 9 is 10. Now, where should we put the decimal point? Notice that we have 2 digits to the right of the decimal point in the first number, and 1 digit to the right of the decimal point in the second number. So we need to put the decimal point where we have 3 numbers to the right of it. So the answer is going to be 10.62. So that's 4.5 times 2.36. 25. A hospital has 800 employees. 5% of the staff are doctors, and 1/4 of all employees are nurses. How many employees are neither doctors nor nurses? Go ahead and try that problem. So let's find out how many are doctors first. What is 5% of 800? 10% of 800 is 80. 5% is half of 10%. So 5% is half of 80, and half of 80 is 40. You can confirm this by taking 800 and multiplying 5% as a decimal, which is 0.05. 800 times 0.05 is 40. So there are 40 doctors in this hospital. Now, 1/4 of all employees are nurses. So what is 1/4 of 800? 1/4 of 800 is basically 800 divided by 4. Now, 8 divided by 4 is 2, so 800 divided by 4 is 200. So we have 40 doctors and 200 nurses. The rest are neither doctors nor nurses, and that's what we're looking for. So that's going to be 800 minus the sum of these two numbers. So 800 minus 240. 800 minus 200 is 600, and 600 minus 40 is 560, and that's the final answer. So that's how many employees there are that are neither doctors nor nurses. 26. What is the perimeter of a rectangle that is 5 feet wide and 8 feet long? So let's draw a rectangle. So it's 5 feet wide, 8 feet long. The perimeter is the sum of all 4 sides. So this side has to be 5 and the other side has to be 8. So to calculate the perimeter, we can just add up the numbers. So it's going to be 5 plus 5 plus 8 plus 8. Now 5 plus 5 is 10. 8 plus 8 is 16. 10 plus 16 is 26. So the perimeter of the rectangle is 26 feet. And that's it. 27. 500 patients were admitted to the hospital yesterday. 2/5 of those admitted were diabetic. 3/4 of the patients who had diabetes were men over the age of 60. How many individuals admitted to the hospital yesterday were diabetic men over the age of 60? So there were 500 patients admitted to the hospital. 2/5 of those admitted were diabetic. So what is 2/5 of 500? So what's 500 multiplied by 2 divided by 5? Well, let's divide first. 500 divided by 5 is 100. And 100 times 2 is 200. So 2/5 of 500 is 200. So 200 of those who were admitted were diabetic. And out of that number, 3/4 of those patients were men over the age of 60. So what is 3/4 of 200? Well, let's divide 200 by 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So 200 divided by 4 is 50. And 50 times 3 is 150. So 150 individuals were men over the age of 60 who were diabetic. And so C is the answer. 28. A hospital has 900 employees. 2/3 of the staff are women. 3/4 of all the women working at the hospital are nurses. What is the percentage of the total staff that are women who are not nurses? So let's start with 900. That's the total amount of people working at this hospital. Now, 2/3 of this amount are women. So what is 2/3 of 900? So 900 times 2 divided by 3. So let's divide 900 by 3 first. 900 divided by 3 is 300. 300 times 2 is 600. So that means that 600 are women, and the other 1/3, which is 300, because 900 minus 600 is 300, that's how much men are working at this hospital. Now, out of the 600 women, 3/4 are nurses. That means the other 1/4 are not nurses. What is 3/4 of 600. So what's 600 times 3 divided by 4? Well, 600 divided by 4 is 150, and 150 times 3 is 450. And 600 minus 450 is 150. So 450 are nurses, and 150 are not nurses. So what is the percentage of the total staff, which is 900, that are women who are not nurses? So 150 are women who are not nurses. So what is the percentage of, so 150 is what percent of 900? To figure that out, divide the two numbers, 150 by 900, and then multiply it by 100%. 150 divided by 900 is 0.167. So times 100%, that's going to be 16.7%. So A is the answer. 29. Lisa receives an annual salary of $90,000 working as a nurse. She puts 10% of her salary into a retirement account before taxes. And then she pays 25% of her remaining salary in federal income taxes, Social Security, and Medicare taxes. Using after-tax dollars, $200 per month is deducted from her paycheck to pay for health insurance. If she gets paid bi-monthly, how much money will she have from her next paycheck, rounded to the nearest dollar? So how can we solve this problem? Well, let's begin with her annual salary, which is $90,000 per year. Now, 10% of this amount is going to go into her retirement account. So what is 10% of 90,000? You just got to move the decimal one unit to the left. 10% is going to be 9,000. So now let's take the difference between 90,000 and 9,000. If you subtract 90 by 9, you get 81. Now she's going to be taxed at a 25% rate on the remaining $81,000. So what is 25% of 81,000? It's 81,000 times 0.25. So that's $20,250. Now, let's take the difference between these two values. So if we take 81,000 and subtract it by 20,250, we're going to have 60,750 in after-tax dollars. Now let's focus on how much she's paying for health insurance. Every month she pays a total of $200 for health insurance. Now, she gets paid bi-monthly, which means she receives 2 paychecks every month. So therefore, she's paying out $100 in health insurance for each paycheck. But let's focus on the amount that she pays in health insurance for the whole year. Now there's 12 months in a year. So she's going to pay 200 times 12, or $2,400 in health insurance for the whole year. So if we take the difference between 60,750 and 2,400, this means that she has 58,350 left over in after-tax dollars after health insurance. So now this goes to her. So we need to determine how much money she will have from her next paycheck around to nearest dollar. Now she's getting paid twice a month, and there's 12 months in a year. So she's going to receive a total of 24 paychecks in 1 year. So let's divide 58,350 by 24. And so that's going to give us $2,431.25. So this is the answer, but we wish to round it to the nearest dollar. So we're going to say E is the right answer, 2431. That's it. Number 30. Which unit is used to describe the volume of a fluid? Is it A, kilograms, B, meters, C, milliliters, D, pounds, or E volts. Kilograms is the unit for mass. It describes the quantity of matter. So grams, kilograms, milligrams tells you the amount of matter in a material or something. Meters is a unit of length. It tells you how long something is. It can describe the length of a book or the height of a person. You could use meters, you could use feet, inches, kilometers, miles. All of those are units of length. Milliliters describes the volume of a fluid. So liters, milliliters, ounces, gallons, they describe volume. So C is the answer. If you see this symbol, that represents pounds. So that describes the weight of something. And technically, weight is a force. And kilograms is a unit of mass. Even though you can convert kilograms into pounds, technically, they measure different things. But they're related in a way. Now, E, that's volts. So that's a unit for voltage. If you're dealing with electricity, this tells you the amount of energy in joules per coulomb of charge that passes through a circuit. So think of a 1.5 volt AA battery, or a 9 volt battery, or 120 volts in basically the socket in the wall. So voltage describes basically the energy per unit charge that's flowing in electricity. But for this problem, C is the correct answer. 31. What is the value of x in the equation shown below? So what do you think we need to do here? How can we get the answer to this problem? Well, the first thing we need to do is distribute. Let's distribute 3 to 2x minus 7. So 3 times 2x is 6x, and then 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. Now let's distribute the 2 to 5x minus 8. 2 times 5x is 10x, and then 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. Now let's combine like terms. Negative 16 minus 21, that's negative 37. Now let's add 37 to both sides. And at the same time, let's subtract both sides by 6x. 6x and negative 6x will cancel. And negative 37 and 37 will also cancel. On the left, we have negative 21 plus 37, which is the same as 37 minus 21, and that's 16. On the right, 10 minus 6 is 4. So 4x equals 16. Now, if we divide both sides by 4, we can see that x is equal to 4. And so that's the answer. Answer choice D is the right answer. 32. Evaluate the expression shown below. Now 4 to the third, that's 4 times 4 times 4. So that's 64. And then 4 minus 11 is negative 7. And minus negative 5. When you see two negative signs like that, it's the same as a positive sign. So that's basically plus 5. Now we have an absolute value expression. The absolute value of negative 7 is basically positive 7. And then 6 times 7 is 42, but we have negative 6 times positive 7, so that's negative 42. And 64 minus 42 is 22, and 22 plus 5 is 27. And that's it for this problem, so D is the right answer. 33. A truck travels 200 miles in 4 hours, and then another 150 miles in 3 hours. What is the average speed of the truck for the entire trip? To calculate the average speed, it's equal to the total distance divided by the total time to complete the entire trip. And this formula comes from this equation. D is equal to RT. Distance equals rate multiplied by time. So the rate, or the average speed, is distance divided by time. So what is the total distance that the truck travels for? The total distance is going to be 200 plus 150. So for the entire trip, the truck travels a distance of 350 miles. Now what is the total time? It's going to be 4 hours plus 3 hours, or 7 hours. So what is 350 divided by 7? 350 is 35 times 10. And 35 is 7 times 5. So we can cancel a 7, and we're left with 5 times 10, which is 50. So this is going to be the average speed for the entire trip. It's 50 miles per hour, which means that answer choice D is the right answer. 34. John travels 160 miles in 3 hours. At this rate, how long will it take him to travel 900 miles? So once again, we have another distance, rate, time problem. So D is equal to RT. Now, what we know about this problem is that the rate, or the average speed, is the same for the first part and for the second part. So let's calculate the average speed for the first part. We have the distance. He travels 160 miles in 3 hours. So T is 3 hours. So to calculate R, we need to divide both sides by 3. So 160 divided by 3, that's going to be 53.33 miles per hour. So that's the average speed for the first part. Now we're told that the rate is the same. So at this rate, how long will it take him to travel 900 miles? So we have the rate for the second part, and we have the total distance. What we're missing is the time. How long means what is the value of T? So using the same formula, let's replace D with 900 and R with 53.33. And let's solve for T. So we need to divide both sides by this number to get T by itself. (900) divided by 53.33, that's about 16.876 hours. So we can round it and say it's going to take him approximately 16.9 hours for him to travel 900 miles. So once again, D is the right answer. 35. A car has been traveling for 3 hours in a 720-mile trip at an average speed of 65 miles per hour. At what average speed should the driver maintain for the remainder of the journey to complete the entire trip in 10 hours? So let's say if the driver wants to travel from point A to point B. Now we need to realize that this problem has to be broken into 2 parts. So let's say in the first part, he needs to travel from point A to point C. And in the second part, he goes from point C to point B. Now, we know that the total distance for the entire trip is 720 miles. So that's the distance between point A and B. Now, we also know the total time for the entire trip is 10 hours. So the time it takes for him to go from point A to point C, the first part of the trip, that's 3 hours. And to go from point C to point B, the second part, has to be 10 minus 3, which is 7 hours. So how can we determine the average speed for the second part of the trip? We have the average speed for the first part is 65. That's going from A to C. But what is the average speed of the driver going from C to B in order to complete the entire trip in 10 hours? How can we find that answer? In order to determine the average speed using this equation, we need 2 things: the distance and the time. For the second part, we already have the time. What we need to do is find the distance between points C and B. So let's focus on the first part because we already have the time and the average speed. So using the formula, D is equal to RT. R, the average speed, is 65 miles per hour. And he's been driving at that speed for 3 hours. And we can see these units will cancel. And so 65 times 3, that's going to be 195 miles. So that's the distance between points A and C. Now we have the total distance. It's 720. So if we take 720 and subtract it by 195, that's going to give us the distance between points C and B, which is 525 miles. So now, using the same formula, D equals RT, but solving for R, the average speed is going to be the distance divided by the time. So if you take 525 miles and divide it by 7 hours, this will give you the average speed that the driver needs to maintain to complete the entire trip in 10 hours. And so this is equal to 75 miles per hour. And so answer choice C is the right answer. Number 36. The figure below consists of a semicircle attached to a rectangle. Which of the following expressions represent the total area of the figure? So we know how to find the area of a rectangle. It's simply length times width. So in this case, it's going to be 8 times 10, and that's going to be 80, or 80 square feet. So that's the area of the rectangle. But now, what about the area of a semicircle? The area of a full circle is pi r squared. So for a semicircle, which is half of a circle, it's going to be 1/2 pi r squared. Now, we need to know what the radius of the circle is. Now, notice that this portion of the semicircle is the diameter of the circle, which is equal to twice the radius. So the radius is half of the diameter. So this portion is the radius of the circle, which is half of 8. Therefore, we can say the radius of the circle is 4 feet. So this is going to be 1/2 pi times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16, and half of 16 is 8. So the area of the semicircle is going to be 8 pi square feet. So what we need to do is simply add these two values. So it's going to be 80 plus 8 pi square feet. Therefore, C is the right answer. 37. A seminar of 200 attendees consists of 120 men. Which of the following represents the ratio of women to the total number of attendees in this event? So let's write down the ratio that we need to find. So we want to find the ratio to the ratio of women to the number of attendees. So how many women are in this event? We know that the total number of attendees is 200, 120 of which are men. So the difference, 200 and 120, that will give us the number of women in this event. So we have 80. So what is the ratio between 80 and 200? So all we need to do to find the ratio is simplify the fraction. So we could begin by canceling a 0. 80 divided by 200 is the same as 8 over 20. And then we could reduce the fraction. 8 is 4 times 2. 20 is 4 times 5. So we can cancel a 4. And so the ratio is going to be 2 to 5, or 2 over 5. So you can write the ratio as a fraction or with a colon. So you can represent it like this if you want to. So therefore, B is the right answer. Number 38. If a 5-liter saline solution requires 42 grams of salt, how many grams of salt is required to make a 38-liter saline solution? Now what we have is a conversion problem. And the first thing you want to do is identify the conversion factor. The conversion factor in this problem relates the number of liters to grams of salt. So we can say that 5 liters corresponds to 42 grams of salt. Now we want to know how many grams of salt is required to make a 38-liter saline solution. So basically, we need to convert 38 liters to grams of salt. So always start with what you're given, and that is 38 liters. Now in the second fraction, I'm going to put the conversion factor. So I need to put the 5 liters on the bottom so that the unit liters will cancel, giving me the unit grams. So I'm going to put 42 grams on top. And so the answer is going to be 38 times 42 divided by 5. 38 times 42, that's 1596. And then if we divide that number by 5, that will be 319.2. And so answer choice A is the right answer. 39. Sally can make 15 cakes with 4 cups of flour. How many cakes can she make with 14 cups of flour? So once again, this is another conversion problem. So starting with the conversion factor, we know that 15 cakes correlates to 4 cups of flour. What we need to do is find out how many cakes does she need, or that she can make with 14 cups of flour. So we're going to start with 14 cups of flour and convert it to the number of cakes. So we need to put the unit cups of flour on the bottom so that they will cancel just like before. And we're going to put the number of cakes on top. And so that's going to be 15 cakes. Now looking at our answers, we don't have a decimal answer, so we need to simplify the result or the fraction we're going to get. So I'm going to break down 14 into 7 times 2. And 4, I'm going to break it down into 2 times 2. So all I can do in this problem is cancel a 2. So I'm going to have a 2 in the bottom of my fraction, and then on top, 7 times 15. 7 times 10 is 70, 7 times 5 is 35, 70 and 35 adds up to 105. So it's going to be 105 divided by 2 cakes. So if you want to get a decimal value for that, 105 over 2, that's 52.5. So she can make 52.5 cakes with 14 cups of flour, based on the first sentence. So we can see that answer choice E is the right answer. Number 40. The graph below shows the average monthly temperature in Fahrenheit of city ABC. Which of the following statements is supported by the graph? So let's look at statement A. The coldest month is February. Is that true or false? Well, that's a false statement because in January the temperature is the lowest. So January is the coldest month. So we can eliminate answer choice A. That is a false statement. Let's go ahead and write the temperatures for each month. In November, the temperature is approximately 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And in December, it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. For January, it's 40. February is about 45. And March is 50. Now, part B. The highest temperature between November and March is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's false. In November, it was about 55. Part C. The percent increase in temperature from January to March is 25%. So in January, the temperature was 40, and in March is 50. So to calculate the percent increase, it's going to be the new value, which is 50, minus the old value of 40, divided by the old value, or the original value of 40, times 100%. Now 50 minus 40 is 10. And 10 divided by 40 is 0.25. 0.25 times 100% is 25%. So therefore, answer choice C is a true statement, which makes it the answer. Now looking at statement D, the average temperature for the 5 months listed in the graph is 44 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that true or false? Well, to calculate the average temperature, we need to add up the 5 values first, and then we're going to divide it by 5. So 55 plus 50 plus 40 plus 45 plus 50 is 240. And 240 divided by 5 is 48. So the average temperature for the 5 months is 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not 44. so we can eliminate answer choice D. Now, for E, the temperature range is 10 degrees Fahrenheit for the 5 months listed in the graph above. The range is the difference between the highest value, which is 55, and the lowest value, which is 40. Now, 55 minus 40 will give us a temperature range of 15 degrees Fahrenheit and not 10. So we can eliminate answer choice E, which means answer choice C is the correct answer. 41. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression shown below? So all we need to do is simplify this expression. But we need to do so using PEMDAS, basic order of operations. So we need to multiply before we add or subtract. So we can't do 42 minus 6. We need to multiply 6 times 3 first. 6 times 3 is 18. And we shouldn't do 9 minus 12. We need to divide 12 by 4 first. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. And 42 minus 18 is 24. And 24 divided by 6 is 4. And so that's the final answer for this problem. So D is the right answer. Number 42. What is the value of x in the equation shown below? So x is multiplied by a fraction and is equal to a number. How can we solve for the value of x? In order to do so, we need to get x by itself. So we need to get rid of the 5 over 9 on the left side. The best way to do that is to multiply by the reciprocal of that fraction, and that is by 9 over 5. On the left side, 9 divided by 9 is 1, so they will cancel, and the 5s will cancel as well. So we just have x on the left side. So x is equal to 35 times 9 over 5. Now 35, you can write it as 5 times 7. And you can put that over 1 if you want to. So notice that the 5s will cancel. So we're left with 7 times 9. And 7 times 9 is 63. So x is equal to 63. And that's all you need to do for this problem. So B is the right answer. 43. What is 12 divided by 7 rounded to the nearest hundredths? So to begin, let's convert the fraction into a decimal. And I'm going to use long division to do so. So 12 divided by 7, we need to write it like this. Now how many times does 7 go into 12? 7 goes into 12 one time. And 12 minus 7 is 5. Now 7 doesn't go into 5, so we need to add a decimal point and a 0. Now 7 goes into 50. We're going to treat 5 as if it's 50. 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. So 7 times 0.7 is 4.9. And the difference between these two is 0.1. Now 7 doesn't go into 1. So if we add a 0, it can go into 10. 7 goes into 10 one time. 7 times 1 is 7, so 7 times 0.01 is 0.07. And the difference between 0.10 and 0.07 is 0.03. Now 7 doesn't go into 3, so we got to add a 0. 7 goes into 30 4 times. And the difference is going to be 28. Now we could stop here. Our goal is to round it to the nearest hundredths. So we need to focus on this number. Is it going to be rounded down to a 1 or rounded up to a 2? Now, because we have a 4 and not a 5, we need to round it down to a 1. So the correct answer is B, 1.71. Now let's say if we have this number, for example, 379.4268. You need to be familiar with each number listed here. So 4 is in the tenths place, 2 is in the hundredths place, 6 is in the thousandths place, 9 is in the ones place, this is the tens, and this is the hundreds. So I'm going to write it out. So here we have ones, tens, hundreds. This is the tenths with THS. The 2 is in the hundredths place. And the 6 is in the thousandths place. Now, let's say if we want to round it to the thousandths place. So the last number we want to write is here at the 6. So if you're going to round it to the thousandths place, this should be the last digit that you write. Now, looking at the 8, if this number is 5 or more, we need to round this number to the next higher number. So to round this number to the thousandths place, it's going to be 379.427. Now, if we want to round it to the hundredths place, we got to stop at this number. So looking at the next number to the right, it's 5 or more. If it's 5 or more, we're going to round it up. If it's 4 or less, we're going to round it down. So to round it to the hundredths place, it's going to be 379.43. Now to round it to the tenths place, we're going to stop here at the 4. Now 2 is 4 or less, so we're going to keep it at 4. We're not going to round it up to 5. So to round it to the tenths place is going to be 379.4. Now to round it to the ones place, we're going to stop at this number. So looking at the number to the right, it's 4 or less. So we're going to keep it at 9 and not round it up to 380. So to round it to the ones place, it's going to be 379. Now to round it to the tenths place, we're going to stop at this number. So either we round it up to 380 or round it down to 370. So 9 is in the category of 5 or more. So we're going to round it up to 380. So that's how you can round it to the tenths place. Now to round it to the hundredths place, that's HUNDREDS, not with THS. It's either going to be 300 or 400. So looking at the 7, that's 5 or more. So to round it to the hundredths place, it's going to be approximately 400. So you need to be familiar with how to round numbers, and you need to know where you should round it at which digit. So hopefully this example gave you a good understanding of this if you needed it. Number 44. Megan requires 2 milliliters of insulin in liquid form 3 times a day. At this rate, how long will a bottle containing 90 cc's last? Let's answer this question with a conversion process. So she has a bottle with 90 cc's of insulin. Now you need to know that 1 cc is basically equal to a milliliter. And so we can write that in our next fraction. So the unit cc's will cancel. Now, how many milliliters of insulin does she require in a single day? Now, she takes it 3 times a day, and each time she uses up 2 milliliters of insulin. So in one day, she uses up 2 times 3, or a total of 6 milliliters of insulin. So we could say one day equates to 6 milliliters of insulin consumed. And so set it up in such a way that the unit milliliters will cancel. So the final answer is just going to be 90 divided by 6. And 90 divided by 6 is 15. So her supply is going to last her for 15 days. So the correct answer is E. 45. The radius of circle B is 7 units. Which of the following is equivalent to the area of the shaded region rounded to the nearest whole number? To calculate the area of the shaded region, it's going to be the difference between the area of the large object and the area of the small object. So the area of the large object on the outside, that's the area of the circle, minus the area of the small object, which is the area of the triangle. The area of the circle is pi r squared, and the area of a triangle, a right triangle, is 1/2 base times height. Now the radius is 7, and we're dealing with circle B. Since B is the name of the circle, it's the center of the circle. So AB and BC, they're both 7 units long because they both represent the radius of the circle. The radius of the circle is the distance between the center of the circle and any point on the circle. So points A and C are on the circle. So segment AB and CB, they both represent the radius of the circle. So they're both 7. So pi r squared, r is 7, the base of the triangle is 7, and the height of the triangle is 7. 7 squared is 49. So this is going to be 49 over 2, and we have 49 pi in front of that. Now, we need to get a decimal value. Pi is 3.14159. So if we take that number, multiply it by 49, that's going to be 153.938 approximately, and then subtract it by 49 over 2, which is 24.5. So this will give us a rounded answer of 129.4, which we can round that to the nearest whole number, so that's going to be 129. C is the right answer. A rental car company charges a flat fee of $30 plus 12 cents per mile. Joseph wishes to rent a car for no more than $80. Which of the following expressions can be used to calculate the maximum number of miles that Joseph can drive the rental car without exceeding his budget? How can we begin? Well, first we need to write an inequality. He doesn't want to spend more than 80, and he doesn't mind spending less than 80. So whatever he's going to spend has to be less than or equal to 80. Just by knowing that, you can eliminate answer choice B, D, and C. The second thing is we have a flat fee of $30, so there should be no variable attached to 30. Now the 12 cents per mile, that cost can vary based on the number of miles driven. And so we're going to say that it's 0.12 times x, where x represents the number of miles. So if he only drives it for 1 mile, he's going to pay 12 cents extra. If he drives the car for 2 miles, it's going to be 12 cents times 2, or 24 cents. So answer choice A correctly describes the number of miles that he can drive with a maximum spending limit of 80. So let's actually calculate the maximum number of miles that he can use the car. So to begin, we need to subtract both sides by 30. 80 minus 30 is 50. And then after that, divide both sides by 0.12. 50 divided by 0.12 is 416.6. So if we round it to the nearest mile, that's going to be 417. But if we use 417, that's going to exceed his budget of 80 bucks. So we're going to round it down. And so he doesn't want to drive no more than 416 miles, just to be on the safe side, if you want to round it. But the more accurate answer is 416.6 repeating. If he goes beyond that, he's going to spend more than $80. So this is going to be his limit. 47. Lisa adds 400 cc's of fluid into a cylinder with a radius of 5 centimeters. What is the height of the fluid in the cylinder? Well, let's draw a picture. So let's say this is the cylinder, and then she's going to pour liquid into the cylinder, and it's going to rise to some height. Now the radius of this liquid will be the same as the radius of the container, and that is 5 centimeters. But the height will vary based on the volume of fluid that's added to it. And so we need to calculate the height of the fluid in the cylinder. The volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times the height. Now, we have the volume. That's the volume of fluid that's added. So that's 400 cc's. Now you need to know that 1 cc is equal to 1 milliliter, and 1 milliliter is the same as 1 cubic centimeter. And the radius is in centimeters, and looking at the answer choices, the height is in centimeters. So we're going to say we have 400 cubic centimeters. R is 5. And now let's calculate H. 5 squared is 25, and 25 times pi as a decimal, that's about 78.5398 times H. So now let's divide both sides by this number. So H is going to be 400 divided by 78.5398. And so the height of the fluid in the cylinder is going to be 5.09 centimeters. And so we could round that and say it's approximately 5.1, which means D is the right answer. 48. Crystal wishes to paint the walls of a room. The floor of a room is 12 feet by 24 feet, and the height of the room is 10 feet. 2 gallons of paint is needed to cover 125 square feet. If it costs $4.75 to buy 1 gallon of paint, how much money will Crystal need to spend to paint the walls of a room? Well, first let's draw a picture. So we're going to say this represents the floor of a room. And now we're going to draw the walls of a room. So this side is 12 feet and this is 24 feet. So this portion, this is the floor of the room. You could say it's the carpet. And at the top we have the ceiling. Now she's going to paint the 4 walls of a room. So let's say this is the front wall. And the height of the wall is 10 feet. So this portion that she needs to paint, it has an area of 10 feet by 24 feet. And 10 times 24, that's 240 square feet. Now for the wall on the back, that's going to be the same. It's 24 by 10. So combined, it's going to be 240 plus 240, so far that's 480 square feet. Now for the walls on the side, that is the left side and the right side, they measure 12 by 10. So 10 times 12 is 120, so it's 120 for each. So for the left side and the right side, the surface area is going to be 240 square feet. So the surface area for the 4 walls that she's going to paint is going to be a total of 720 square feet. So now that we have the surface area of the walls that she needs to paint, we can now use that figure to calculate how much money she needs to spend to paint those 4 walls of a room. So let's start with 720 square feet. We need to convert this to dollars. So the first conversion that we have is that 2 gallons of paint corresponds to 125 square feet. And to purchase 1 gallon of paint, the cost is $4.75. So the answer is going to be 720 times 2 divided by 125 times 4.75. And so she needs to spend $54.72 in order to paint the 4 walls of a room. And so this is the answer. A newborn baby weighs 9 pounds and 12 ounces. What is the mass of the baby in kilograms? So what do you think we need to do here in order to convert pounds and ounces into kilograms? The first thing we need to do is we need to write out the conversion factors. We should start with that. So you need to know that 1 kilogram is equal to 2.2 pounds. And you also need to know that in 1 pound, there are 16 ounces. So here we have 2 units, and now we need to convert it to 1. So what should we do? First, it's best if we convert this into a single unit. So let's begin by converting 12 ounces into pounds. Now we know that there's 16 ounces in a single pound. So the unit ounces will cancel, and 12 divided by 16 is 0.75. So this portion is 0.75 pounds plus the 9 pounds. So we can say that the baby weighs 9.75 pounds. So we need to take this number and convert it to kilograms using this conversion factor. So 2.2 pounds equates to 1 kilogram. And so setting up this way, we can see that the unit pounds will cancel. So it's going to be 9.75 divided by 2.2. And so it's going to be 4.43 kilograms. And so that's the mass of the baby, which means answer choice D is the right answer. Lauren is reading an 850-page book. It took her 3 hours to read 170 pages of the book. How long will it take her to read the rest of the book? So how can we find the answer in this problem? Now, let's think about this. She already read 170 pages of the book. How many pages does she have left to read? So what we need to do first is subtract 850 by 170. And so the difference is 680. So that's how many pages she has left to read. Now, the real question is, how long is it going to take her to read 680 pages? Now, you could find the answer by setting up a proportion or by doing a conversion problem. So let's set up a conversion. So let's start with 680 pages. Now, it takes her 3 hours to read 170 pages. And if you do it this way, you can see the unit pages will cancel. And so it's going to be 680 times 3 divided by 170. And so she's going to finish the rest of the book in 12 hours, which means C is the right answer. Now, if you wish to set it up as a proportion, here's what you can do. So we need 2 fractions separated by an equal sign. On the left side, I'm going to put the number of pages. And on the right side, the time in hours. So it takes her 3 hours to read 170 pages. How long will it take her, so that's X, to read 680 pages? You could set it up that way. So you need to cross multiply. It's going to be 170 times X. And that's equal to 680 times 3, which is 2040. And now you need to divide both sides by 170. And so this will give you 12 hours. And so you get the same answer. Company XYZ spends $2 million annually on the 4 items listed in the pie chart below. How much money is spent on advertising? So, in their $2 million budget, we can see that they spend 15% on advertising. So all we need to do is find out what 15% of 2 million is. And let's see if we can do it mentally. So first, what is 10% of 2 million? All you got to do is move the decimal 1 unit to the left. So 10% of 2 million is 200,000. Now what's 5% of 2 million? Well, 5%, as we know, is half of 10%. And if 10% represents 200,000, then 5% has to be half of 200,000. So that has to be 100,000. And 15% is the sum of 5% and 10%. So it's going to be the sum of 100 and 200,000, which will be 300,000. And so that's 15% of 2 million. So this particular company spends that much money each year on advertising, which means C is the right answer. 52. Samsung received a 20% discount on a flat screen TV selling for a price of $800. How much did Samsung pay for the TV? So first, we need to determine what 20% of 800 is. So 10% is going to be $80, which means 20% is going to be twice the amount of 80. So 80 times 2, that's 160. So he's going to receive a discount of 160 off the price of the TV. So the price that he's going to pay before tax is going to be the difference between 800 and 160. So 800 minus 100 is 700, and 700 minus 60 is 640. So that's how much money he's going to pay for the TV before tax, which means B is the right answer. 53. The average body temperature of a person is 98.6 Fahrenheit. What is this temperature in Celsius? So here's the formula that relates Fahrenheit to the Celsius temperature. The Fahrenheit temperature is 1.8 times the Celsius temperature plus 32. So let's plug in the Fahrenheit temperature. Let's replace it with 98.6. Let's solve for the Celsius temperature. So the first thing we need to do is subtract both sides by 32. And so these numbers will cancel. 98 minus 32, that's 66. So we have 66.6 equal 1.8 times the Celsius temperature. So now let's divide both sides by 1.8. So if we do so, this will give us a Celsius temperature of 37 degrees. And so that's the average body temperature in Celsius, which means D is the right answer. 54. Which of the following is approximately equal to the expression shown below? So the square root of 87 is approximately equal to which one of the values that we see here? Well, think of some perfect squares that are close to the square root of 87. The square root of 87, it's greater than the square root of 81, but it's less than the square root of 100. So 81 and 100 are perfect squares, because we know what the square root of 81 is. It's 9. 9 times 9 is 81. And the square root of 100 is 10. So the square root of 87 is somewhere between 9 and 10. Therefore, we can eliminate answer choice A, B, and E. So we're between C and D. Now, 87 is closer to 81 than it is to 100. And 9.9 is very close to 10. So we could eliminate D, because that's going to be close to the square root of 100. So the square root of 87 is closer to the square root of 81, just as 9.3 is closer to 9 than it is to 10, which means C is the correct answer. Now, the most simplest way to get the answer is just to use your calculator and type in the square root of 87. If you do so, you're going to get 9.3274 if you round it to this decimal place. So 9.3 is a good approximation. Now let's move on to the next problem. 55. Simplify the expression shown below. So what do you think we need to do in order to simplify this algebraic expression? what I recommend doing is distributing the numbers in front of both parentheses. So we're going to distribute the 3 and the -4 to begin with. So let's do this one step at a time. 3 times 4x squared, that's 12x squared. And then 3 times -5x is -15x. And 3 times -6 is -18. Now, -4 times 5x squared, that's -20x squared. And then -4 times 3x, that's -12x. And -4 times -7 is +28. So now we need to combine like terms. 12x squared minus 20x squared, that's going to be -8x squared. And then -15x plus -12x, that's -27x. And finally, -18 plus 28, or 28 minus 18, that's going to be +10. So this right here is the answer. That's how we could simplify this algebraic expression, or that's how we could subtract two polynomials. So answer choice A is the right answer. Now let's work on this problem. A certain cough medicine contains 4 fluid ounces. If Rebecca takes 1 teaspoon of it twice a day, how long will this medication last her? So how should we even begin a problem like this? What do we need to do? The first thing is that we need to recognize it's a unit conversion problem. We're given 4 fluid ounces. That's the volume of the cough medicine. And our goal is to find out how long this medication will last her. How long is a unit in time? And looking at our answer choices, we want to convert it to days. So how can we convert fluid ounces to days? Well, let's make a list of all the conversion factors that we know. So we know that 1 teaspoon is equal to 4.93 milliliters. We also know that 1 fluid ounce is 29.57 milliliters. Now, are there any other conversion factors that we can use in this problem? We're also told that Rebecca is going to take 1 teaspoon twice a day, which means in one day she takes a total of 2 teaspoons. So we can say 2 teaspoons correlates to 1 day. So now, starting with fluid ounces, we're going to convert that to milliliters. Now, once we have the unit in milliliters, we're going to convert it to teaspoons. And then once we have the unit in teaspoons, we will convert it to days. And so whenever you have this multi-step unit conversion problem, it's helpful to basically plan out how you want to do the conversion, just as you see here. So go ahead and try this problem. Feel free to pause the video to see if you can get the answer. So let's start with what we're given, and that's 4 fluid ounces. Now let's convert it to milliliters first. So we're going to use this conversion factor. So we need to put fluid ounces on the bottom so that that unit will cancel. And we're going to put 29.57 milliliters on top of it. So now we need to convert milliliters to teaspoons. So we're going to use this conversion factor. So we got to put milliliters on the bottom. That's 4.93. And then we're going to put 1 teaspoon on top. So now the unit milliliters will cancel. Now finally, let's convert teaspoon to days using this conversion factor. So we have 2 teaspoons, which correlates to 1 day. So all of the numbers on top, you need to multiply. and then divide by any number on the bottom. And anytime you see a 1, you could skip a 1. So it's going to be 4 times 29.57, and then divided by 4.93, and then take that result and then divide it by 2. So you should get 11.996 approximately. So we could round that and say it's approximately 12 days. So that's how long the medication will last her. So D is the right answer choice. In a hospital with 500 employees, the ratio between doctors, nurses, and administrative personnel is 2 to 5 to 3. What is the difference between the number of nurses and the number of doctors working at this hospital? Go ahead and take a minute and try this problem. So let's write out the information that we know. So we have doctors, and there are nurses, and then we have administrative personnel. I'm just going to write AP for that, and then the total. So what we're going to do is set up 4 fractions and use the ones that we need. So in the bottom of the fraction, we're going to put the ratios. So the ratio between doctors, nurses, and administrative personnel is 2 to 5 to 3. Now what about the total? Well, the total of these 3 numbers is 10. 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 3 is 10. Now, on the top, we're going to put the total number of employees, which we know to be 500. So we're going to say D is the number of doctors, N is the number of nurses, and P for administrative personnel. So we need to determine the number of doctors and nurses, and in order to find the difference between the 2 numbers, which will be the final answer. So let's determine the number of doctors first. We're going to set this fraction equal to this one, and we're going to solve for D. So we can say D over 2 is equal to 500 divided by 10. Now let's cross multiply. 2 times 500 is 1,000. And 10 times D is just going to be 10D. So now we need to divide by 10. And so the number of doctors is going to be 1,000 divided by 10. And so that's 100. So let's save this answer for later. Now we're going to do the same with the number of nurses. So we're going to set N over 5 equal to 500 over 10. And we're going to cross multiply. So we have 10 times N, and that's equal to 5 times 500. 5 times 5 is 25. So 5 times 500 is 2,500. Dividing both sides by 10, we can cancel a 0, and so we can say the number of nurses is 250. So the difference between the number of nurses and the number of doctors is going to be 250 minus 100, which is 150. So there's 150 more nurses than doctors. Therefore, D is the right answer. 58. The bar graph below shows the revenue generated by the hospital from the years 2017 to 2021. What is the percent change in the revenue of the hospital from 2020 to 2021? In 2020, the revenue is approximately 250 million. And in 2021, the revenue is approximately 200 million. So the revenue went down. So we're dealing with a percent decrease and not a percent increase. So the percent change has to be negative, which means we can eliminate answer choice B and D as well. So we're between answer choice A and C. So to calculate the percent change, the formula is going to be the new value minus the old value or the original value divided by the original value times 100%. So the new value in 2021 that's 200 million. The original value is 250 divided by the original times 100%. So 200 minus 250 is negative 50. And if we take negative 50 and divide it by 250, that's going to be negative 0.2. Negative 0.2 times 100% is negative 20%. And so that is the answer. Answer choice A is the right answer. 59. Researchers on island XYZ noticed that as the rabbit population increased, the number of leopards on the island increased. As the rabbit population decreased, the number of leopards decreased. Which of the following best describes the relationship between the rabbit population and the leopard population on the island? So let's look at answer choice A. The rabbit population is the dependent variable and the leopard population is the independent variable. Is that true or false? That is a false statement. Notice that as the rabbit population increased, the number of leopards on the island increased. This indicates that the number of leopards depends on the number of rabbits. So the leopard population should be the dependent variable and the rabbit population should be the independent variable. So if we were to graph it, we need to put the rabbit population on the x-axis and the leopard population on the y-axis. As the rabbit population increases, the leopard population increases as well. Now what about B? There is a negative correlation between the rabbit and leopard population. Is that true or false? So that is a false statement. A negative correlation describes an inverse relationship. So let's say if A goes up and B goes down, that's an inverse relationship. That's a negative correlation. Or if A goes down and B goes up, that's also a negative correlation. Now what about answer choice C? There is a positive correlation between the rabbit and leopard population. This is true. A positive correlation is the same as the direct relationship. As the rabbit population goes up, the leopard population goes up. And so that indicates a positive covariation. Now we can eliminate answer choice D, which states that there is no relationship between the rabbit and leopard population, because in answer choice C, we did establish a relationship. So answer choice C is the correct answer for this problem. Number 60. A doctor is planning to visit a hospital in city XYZ. He plans to stay at a hotel for $99 per night for 3 nights. The airplane ticket costs $199 for a round trip. He expects to spend no more than $250 on meals. How much should he expect to spend on his trip, including a 6% sales tax on hotel and airfare costs? So let's start with the hotel expenses. So he's going to spend $99 per night for 3 nights. So 99 times 3, that's $297. Now for the airplane ticket, he's going to spend $199. So for travel costs, if we add $297 plus $199, that's $496. Now he's going to spend 6% on sales tax for the hotel and the ticket expenses. So 6% of $496, that's going to be $496 times 0.06. And so that's going to be $29.76. In addition, he's going to spend $250 on meals. So if we add $496 plus 29.76 and $250, this will give us a total of $775.76. So that's how much he should expect to spend on this trip, which means C is the right answer. So that's it for this video, and I hope you found it useful. So I hope it helps you on the math section of the TEAS exam, and thanks again for watching.